Imagine waking up to news of missiles raining down on a US base, shaking the world to its core. The US and Iran are on a collision course, with warships, jets, and drones poised for battle in a region ready to ignite. In this video, we're diving into a heart-pounding scenario where these tensions erupt into all-out conflict and asking the big question: could this spark World War III? Grab a seat, because this journey through strategy, stakes, and global fallout will keep you glued to the screen. To grasp why this scenario feels so volatile, we need to rewind and understand the US-Iran relationship. Since the 1979 Iranian Revolution, when the US-backed Shah was overthrown, the two nations have been at odds. Iran's Islamic Republic branded America the great power, while the US accused Iran of sponsoring terrorism through groups like Hezbollah. The 1980s saw skirmishes, like the US Navy's clash with Iranian forces in the Persian Gulf during the Iran-Iraq War. But the real flashpoint came with Iran's nuclear ambitions. In 2002, revelations of Iran's secret nuclear facilities sparked global alarm. The US, fearing a nuclear-armed Iran, pushed for sanctions. After years of tense negotiations, the 2015 Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, JCPOA, was signed, with Iran agreeing to limit its nuclear program for sanctions relief. But in 2018, the US withdrew, citing the deal's flaws, despite Iran's verified compliance. This betrayal fueled mistrust and subsequent US maximum pressure campaigns. Sanctions, cyber attacks, and the 2020 assassination of General Qasem Soleimani pushed Iran to enrich uranium closer to weapons-grade levels. By 2025, the situation is dire. The new US administration demands a tougher deal, but Iran, scarred by past broken promises, insists on third-party mediators like Qatar or the UAE. These neutral nations would ensure accountability, preventing the US from reneging again. Washington, however, views this as a diplomatic slight, opting for a show of force instead. 6 B-2 Spirit bombers armed with GBU-57 massive ordnance penetrators are deployed to Diego Garcia. These bombs can destroy Iran's deepest bunkers, like the Fordo nuclear facility. Over 50 F-35s, F-15s, F-16s, and A-10s flood bases in Qatar, Bahrain, and the UAE. This isn't posturing, it's preparation. Iran, meanwhile, faces internal chaos. Protests over mandatory headscarves and economic woes, like 20% electricity shortages and 25% natural gas deficits, erode the regime's grip. Recent military flops, like the October 2024 missile barrage on Israel that killed only one civilian, have humiliated Tehran. With US forces encircling them, Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, is cornered. Hardliners push for a bold strike to restore pride and deter invasion, setting the stage for a catastrophic clash. Picture this: 2:45 a.m., July 12, 2025, in Iran's Fars province. Mobile launchers roar to life and underground silos in Khuzestan hum with activity. Iran unleashes a surprise assault on Udeid Air Base in Qatar, the nerve center of US operations in the Middle East. The mission is surgical: destroy runways, aircraft shelters, the air traffic control tower, and the CENTCOM command post buried beneath the base. The strike package is formidable. 20 Zulfiqar ballistic missiles, with a 900-mile range and pinpoint accuracy, 20 Desful missiles, designed to overwhelm defenses, 10 Sejal missiles, traveling at hypersonic speeds, 15 Fateh Mobin missiles, infrared homing weapons launched from civilian ships, and 20 Shahed 136 drones, loitering munitions built for precision strikes. Iran's GPS spoofing creates an electromagnetic shield, masking launch sites from US satellites. Underground silos allow reloads without exposing personnel, a tactic honed from years of war games. Al-Udeid's defenses are robust: a THAAD battery, 3 Patriot systems, and C-RAM turrets for close-range protection. 2 Aegis-equipped Navy destroyers patrol nearby waters. US infrared satellites detect the launches within 20 seconds, triggering alerts from the Pentagon to Tampa's CENTCOM headquarters, then to Al-Udeid and bases as far as Diego Garcia. Soldiers race to bunkers, pilots sprint to cockpits, and ground crews defy orders to prep jets for takeoff. But with shelters full, F-22s, F-35s, and B-1 Lancers sit exposed. The Fateh Mobin missiles strike first, launched from 3 civilian ships off Qatar's coast. Hidden in cargo containers, these 29.5-foot missiles target radars and satellite dishes to blind defenses. 9 are downed by Patriots and 3 by CRAMs, but 3 hit. 2 demolish the air traffic control tower, crippling coordination. 1 disables a Patriot radar. The Sagel missiles follow, diving from high altitudes at Mach 10. Patriots intercept 8, but 2 strike. A fuel depot explodes, and a hardened shelter housing an F-22 is obliterated. Firefighters risk their lives to contain the inferno. The main barrage arrives, with Zulfiqar and Desful missiles saturating defenses. Patriots and Aegis ships destroy dozens, but 2 more shelters are hit, and 5 F-35s on the tarmac are reduced to scrap. The Shahed 136 drones, exploiting depleted CRAM ammo, dive onto exposed aircraft. In 28 minutes, the attack ends. Losses are staggering: $500 million in aircraft, $2 billion in total damage. 1 pilot is killed, dozens suffer traumatic brain injuries, and a civilian outside the base dies from debris, sparking outrage in Qatar. Qatar's government, furious over the civilian death and violation of their neutrality, demands answers. Most U.S. allies in the region, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and the UAE, have already closed their airspace to U.S. combat aircraft, fearing entanglement in a wider war. Only Israel allows overflights, forcing U.S. planes into predictable routes that Iran's S-300 and Bavar 373 air defenses can target. This restriction complicates B-2 missions, which rely on stealth and surprise to evade radar. Iran's attack, though partially thwarted, showcases their asymmetrical prowess. Their 3,000-plus ballistic missiles and tens of thousands of drones, many reverse-engineered from Western tech, allow strikes from hidden sites. Underground missile cities in Khuzestan and Fars make preemptive U.S. attacks costly and risky. Iran's strategy leans on overwhelming numbers and surprise, compensating for their outdated air force and navy against U.S. superiority. The U.S. response options are limited. A ground invasion is unthinkable. Iran's 610,000 active-duty troops, rugged terrain, and urban strongholds would bog down forces echoing Iraq's quagmire. Airstrikes are feasible, targeting missile sites, nuclear facilities, or command centers, but Iran's layered defenses pose risks. The B-2 and F-35 can penetrate, but losses are possible, especially with constrained flight paths. Missile strikes, like Tomahawks or LRASMs, are safer but unlikely to dismantle Iran's dispersed arsenal or force regime change. Globally, oil markets tremble. Iran's threat to mine the Strait of Hormuz, through which 20% of global oil flows, spikes prices to $150 per barrel. Europe, reliant on Gulf oil, faces energy rationing. China, Iran's top oil buyer, pressures Tehran to de-escalate to protect its economy. Russia, quietly backing Iran with arms and cyber support, gains leverage as Europe scrambles for alternative gas supplies. Could this clash ignite a global war? Let's unpack the scenarios. A US-Iran conflict would disrupt energy markets, with Iran potentially targeting Saudi Arabia's Abd al-Qais oil facility or UAE ports. This could trigger a 35% GDP loss for Gulf states and a global recession. But a true World War III requires major powers like China, Russia, or NATO to join the fray. China is a critical player. A US-Iran war could distract Washington, tempting Beijing to act on Taiwan. Historical analyses, like the 2023 RAND Corporation study, suggest a Sino-US war would stay naval and air-focused, avoiding global escalation. But if China strikes US bases in Japan, it risks pulling in NATO or India, which eyes China's border disputes. India might push into Tibet, threatening China's water supplies, but this remains unlikely given China's ground force strength. Russia could exploit US preoccupation to advance in Europe. A move on Lithuania, Latvia, or Estonia would trigger NATO's Article 5, risking nuclear escalation. Russia's 6,000 nuclear warheads match the US's, but economic sanctions and domestic unrest make all-out war a gamble. Still, Russia might supply Iran with advanced S-400 systems or cyber warfare tools, escalating indirectly. A nuclear scenario is the ultimate nightmare. Iran lacks nuclear weapons but could sprint toward one if cornered, prompting US or Israeli preemptive strikes. If Russia or China were drawn in, a global nuclear exchange could kill 500 million instantly, with 2 billion more succumbing to starvation, disease, and a 1 to 2 degrees Celsius global cooling effect. Farmland in Canada and Russia would become unusable, and debris from burning cities would trigger respiratory diseases. Yet as Hiroshima and Nagasaki show, humanity could rebuild, with Africa potentially emerging as a new power hub due to its agrarian economies. Iran's regime is weaker than it appears. Its economy is battered by sanctions, corruption, and mismanagement. The 20% electricity deficit forces rolling blackouts, while 25% natural gas shortages leave homes cold. Gasoline is scarce, with long lines at pumps despite 25% of GNP spent on subsidies to appease citizens. These subsidies drain funds, stifling energy investment and fueling a black market where smugglers sell cheap Iranian fuel abroad. For nearly a decade, Iran gifted Syria 100,000 barrels of oil daily, propping up Assad's regime. With Syria's collapse and Iranian proxies like Hezbollah weakened, this investment yielded no return. Corruption siphons off infrastructure funds. 30% of energy projects are lost to graft or inefficiency. The rial has plummeted, with inflation hitting 40% annually, driving up food and construction costs. Social unrest is boiling. Protests against headscarf laws and morality police are emboldened by viral videos, with 70% of Iranians favoring liberal reforms per underground polls. Youth unemployment hovers at 25%, and water shortages in cities like Isfahan spark riots. The regime's grip is slipping, with even loyalists questioning its competence after military failures against Israel. The US could exploit this. A campaign targeting power plants, refineries, and military bases would deepen shortages, pushing citizens to revolt. Psychological operations, leaflets, radio broadcasts, or hacked state media could amplify dissent. But this risks civilian casualties, which could unify Iranians against the US, as seen during the 1980-88 Iran-Iraq War. A delicate balance is needed to avoid backfiring. The US isn't invincible. Its $25 trillion economy and $738 billion defense budget dwarf Iran's, but alienating allies weakens its position. Jordan, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE refuse airspace access, fearing Iran's retaliation. This forces US planes into corridors covered by Iran's 400 air defense radars, risking losses even for stealthy B-2s. Without regional bases, refueling and logistics strain operations. Domestic politics complicate things. A war with Iran could cost $1 trillion over a decade, per CBO estimates, fueling debate in Congress. Public support, already divided after Iraq and Afghanistan, might wane if casualties mount. Cyber attacks from Iran or Russia could target US grids or banks, sowing chaos. Iran's proxies like the Houthis could strike US ships or allies, stretching forces thin. The US military's edge, 11 aircraft carriers, 2,000 plus advanced jets, and 10,000 missiles, is undeniable. But replacing losses is slow. An F-35 takes 18 months to build, and munitions like Patriot interceptors are depleted faster than they're produced. A prolonged conflict would test industrial capacity, especially with China dominating global supply chains for electronics and rare earths. A US-Iran war could wreak havoc, costing trillions and destabilizing the Middle East. While World War III is unlikely, the risks, oil shocks, regional conflicts, or nuclear escalation are real. Iran's internal cracks offer a chance for change, but toppling the regime without a costly war is a high-stakes bet. The US must rebuild alliances to avoid fighting alone, but time is short. What's your take? Could this stay a regional fight, or would it drag the world into chaos? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'm curious to hear your perspective. If you found this deep dive eye-opening, smash that like button, subscribe, and check out our next video on a US-China conflict. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.